Hey there, how are you today? Well, wouldn't you know it, second week of classes up at the university, and I come down with a cold. Been fighting a cold for about a week. So if I'm sounding a little froggy, that's the reason. My wife gave me a cold. She has it a lot worse than I do, so I got off pretty lucky in this instance. But of course, just as everything's getting up to speed and getting crazy again up at the university, I get sick. So been powering it right through the all the coughing and the hacking around and trying to keep on schedule with my tutorials and shorts and vlogs. So, but it's just typical. This isn't the first time. Right at the beginning of the semester, we were going to blame it on the students returning from summer vacation, but we had, I think, had already contracted it before the students got back into town. So anyway, hey there, I'm Rusty Nelson, the old Rusty Professor, talking watercolor today in vlog 20, I think this is. And well, I've been getting some pretty good comments on some of my posts and tutorials. Let me look here real quick. I've got one talking about it was my most recent post on Saturday was a portrait of a young girl in profile. Started out with a sketch using the Loomis method to get the profile in place, all sketched up, and then I take it into the watercolor work. And then I'm also be posting 3 shorts on the process from sketching, from initial blocking, and then to the detail work. So keep an eye out for those things that'll be posting throughout the next week or two. And then I'm also doing a primer on the Loomis technique and it's really a fairly short 20-minute overview of how to use the Loomis method with a straight-on view, a profile view, and then a 3/4 view of a face. Nobody in particular. And then I'm going to be following that up with a sketch of a specific character from a photograph that I found on Pinterest of it's an old Victorian barkeeper, it looks like, and he's got a big top hat on. So that's going to be dropping, and it's definitely using the Loomis method, and then with the intent of trying to draw that person. So trying to capture a likeness. And for me, when I'm doing my figure drawing class up at the university, it's a good 25% of the time is when I can manage to catch a likeness of the model. But a lot of times we're not necessarily drawing portraits. We're working with the whole figure. And then I'm going to be following that up with some actual Loomis method tutorials on the entire figure as well. Static poses, and then some dynamic poses where they're actually moving, ballerinas, dancers, and things like that have some nice dynamic shapes and forms and figure drawing exercises like that. So that's going to be coming. I have some more landscapes that I'll be putting together and posting out on the channel as well. One of them looks like it's a Scottish landscape with a couple stone structures, and I'm going to introduce a live critter into it, some sheep into that one. And I do have a scene looking down almost like an alleyway between 2 buildings, and then there's a church steeple in the distance. So that one I got on my agenda to work up and post as well. So some structures, some landscapes, some people, some figures, all those things are kind of what I have in mind to be dropping onto the channel in the next month at least. That's probably going to be about a month's worth of tutorials for you to try. So give them a try. One of the comments on the profile portrait from Saturday that I got was that what I was doing there was, I think there was a pun intended there, head and shoulders above their skill level. And and I know, yes, getting started drawing people is a freaking train wreck. It's a nightmare, and it'll be frustrating as hell because it does take so much practice and sensitivities and developing that ability to measure on the fly, because I'm not like a portrait artist where I am using calipers to measure everything and then transfer it over to the drawing and things like that. No, you just have to get an eye, develop an ability to measure distance and relative position of facial features in one location to another. So it is definitely a skill set that you have to practice, and it'll drive you nuts. It will. You'll you'll swear off of it 2 or 3 times before it finally clicks. But stay persistent, because once you do figure out all the proportions, the foreshortening, and the relative positioning and all of that, it's a lot of fun to be able to sketch people and doodle. And it's a great way to pass time if you're sitting in a meeting listening, doing caricatures of people sitting in. I do that a lot, and actually I have a pretty good collection of caricature of various interesting people that sit in on departmental or university-wide committees. So they're definitely fun to sit around and sketch, and that's the fun thing too, is once you know how the formula for constructing portraits and faces on using the Loomis method, you can then start pushing it and exaggerating features and doing caricatures, and that's a lot of fun too. So it's really good to be able to sketch it up in pencil or ink it up on the fly and do that. So definitely practice them as well. The whole idea that drawing and watercolor, they really do go hand in hand, because even when you're slapping that wet media onto paper at towards the back end, when you're needing detail and structure and all of that, you're actually painting with a brush, or I'm sorry, drawing with a brush, and you got to be able to have that mark making sensitivity that will really come into play and help you out with your product that you're creating. So, but just keep practicing. Like I tell my students up there, they talk about it always being so hard, trying to keep proportions right, getting the angles right, and they just know it sucks, because especially when you're drawing people, you can tell immediately, because we're so used to looking at people, if it's not drawn right, if the proportions aren't right, the foreshortenings are not right, the angle of the foot, everything. If it's not right, it's going to look wrong. So, and it sucks. And so I just tell them to embrace the suck. It's going to happen for a while, but if you keep practicing, I've said this time and time again, if you keep practicing, at some point it won't suck. Everything will start clicking, and the clouds part, and the sunshine beams down onto your desktop and your tabletop, and the angels sing, and all is good in the world. So keep at it. Don't give up. Stay determined. Make 1% improvement every time you sit down to draw and sketch. Put that damn sketchbook under your pillow at night, and maybe good things will seep in that way too. And that's another thing I meant to talk about. And I'm glad I didn't have it written down, but it just popped into my head. I had thought about it, but then forgot about it. Yeah, I thought about it, then forgot about it. Sketchbooks. One of the comments was a person just can't throw away their bad ones, because essentially they're working in a sketchbook, so they don't want to rip out the bad ones and throw them away. But and that's fine. I was never really good at keeping a sketchbook. I've got tons of sketchbooks, and I got maybe 5-10 drawings in each one, and then they're still, so every now and then I'll grab a few and do some sketchbooking work. And some of my earlier shorts were with sketchbooks in there. So I haven't done any in probably 4 or 5 months. So I need to get a sketchbook out, do some sketching in it. They're fun to do. I need to take them with me more often and just drag them out whenever I have a spare moment and do it that way. But don't feel bad if you don't do sketchbooks, but do something. Get your laser paper out. Just grab a few sheets of that, sketch and doodle either with a pen or with some pencils. Some of the tutorials I've been doing, I've been working with a blue line pencil or an animator's pencil. They have a nice tooth to them. They're pretty dense. Even the blue ones, the dark blue ones especially, really look great. They create a nice initial sketch that you can then come back in on top of with your your ebony pencils or your number 6 pencils for some really dark lines and do some shading on top of it. And a combination of that blue line sketch along with the graphite, they look great. They're fun to do. Now those would look good in just having them in a sketchbook, or even coming in using the blue line to get the initial drawing and then coming in with a Sharpie. Actually, I got a real nice, it's a gel pen from Sharpie, and I really like it. It makes a really nice line too. It's kind of a gel pen ballpoint. It doesn't have any line variation because it's not a nib, but it does lay down a nice line, and it can get fairly thin too. So if you're just lightly sketching, it creates a nice scratchy line but it is hard to get a good thick to thin line with it. So with that, you need to use one of those Pilot nib pens, and I think you'll have a lot more success with it. So those were a couple really good comments about the tutorials. So definitely noticing, I like this was on an older one. It was the stone wall and the lamp watercolor. They were talking about, when I'm laying down color washes in my initial washes and stuff, I kind of make some irregular marks, and every now and then it leaves a little hole between where the marks crossed over or whatever. And it's I call them peekaboos. And so the viewer was commenting they loved the description of those little white artifacts of laying down that initial wash as a peekaboo. So I've been calling them peekaboos for years. I think most of my students will adopt that terminology as well. And I'd never heard it. I just started calling them that. And it was kind of fun to realize that they're kind of an attractive thing to leave in a watercolor. It gives a nice indication to the viewer that by God, that's what you're looking at. You're looking at a watercolor that, somebody made a couple deft strokes on the paper, and boom, there it is. And I missed that little spot, but so what? It's there. Live with it. And that's kind of how I've always kind of viewed those little marks. So anyway, we are trying to get this semester off to the start. I'm trying to stay diligent to my posting schedule here on the channel. I think I'm doing pretty well. It does become challenging. I've been chopping up some of my longer format content into shorts and working real hard to figure out how to do those in a way that people will watch. I'm not getting a ton of views. I'm still making good progress with my subscriptions. I know you're not supposed to gauge your how well you're doing on your subscriptions or your views, but it's hard not to, since that's the main thing they put out there for you to look at as to how you're doing. But I do feel better about where the videos are going. I'm messing around more with some cuts and zooming in and showing various things and trying to change it up so the videos are a little more interesting to watch. So yeah, I'm still developing my skill sets. I need to kind of focus this semester, and at least that was my intent, was to try to work with getting a better storytelling structure involved in my videos as well. So I've been watching tons of videos again on what I could be doing to get better at this. So I'm right back in the trenches with you and learning something that I am very uncomfortable doing. I spent years, you can ask a lot of my kids over the last 10, 15 years, I've spent years avoiding being on video camera. Oh God, I just dated myself again. I've always been avoiding any of the students who wanted to shoot and interview me on and record me in that way. So it's very ironic that I have decided to do this endeavor, and mainly because we were proposing a new major about social media design and content creation. So I thought I'd take it upon myself and try to learn it and see if it's doable, as doable as we might believe it is without trying to do it. But that's where I'm at on this. So let's see. I don't think I have anything else, and it's just about 15 minutes in, and I don't think I have to do too many edits on this recording. And I do appreciate anybody, I get about 120, 200 views, depending. It depends on how I title everything too, if I can get people to click in and watch any of this. But I do appreciate you guys coming in and listening to me for 15 minutes every week. I think I do have several that watch this fairly religiously. So I do appreciate it. Thank you for watching and bearing with me as I get my way through this and develop skill sets that are going to be necessary as I go forward and as I approach retirement and have something to do and to stay out of my wife's way when we both retire. So, hey, thanks for watching. And if you got any value, if there was any value in this and you felt like you got it, give me a like and a subscribe. And I'll see you next week. Vlog 21. See you then.